Hi, my name is Isabella, and today's tip of the week for the Intern Whisperer is about pre-employment testing. If using this as a part of your recruitment process, you must comply with all applicable federal, state, and local non-discrimination laws. This means you may not design or use tests to discriminate against applicants on the basis of a protected characteristic, such as disability, age, race, color, religion, sex, national origin, or any other protected class. Welcome to the Intern Whisperer. The show is all about the future of work. So this week's guest is Lindse Murphy with Orlando Economic Partnership, and she is the Senior Director of Innovation, and I didn't finish typing the last of it. It's innovation and what, Lindse?
Technology.
And technology. Thank you so much. I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. This is great. And from the moment I met you, you just struck me as a force of nature in all of the best possible ways. I just loved your energy. I love that you're super passionate about nonprofits, especially those that are in the mental health spectrum. And I just know we're going to have a really great show. So I usually kick off the show so that our listeners will know more about you and tell us 5 words that describe you and why those 5 words.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really grateful, and I think the 5 words that best describe me are confident, bubbly, passionate, resilient, and headstrong.
Mm.
I always have to have a couple where you need a little bit of improvement in there.
Mm-hmm. So headstrong, I'm going to ask you about that one first. I identify with that one for a lot of reasons, but why would you have chosen that as your 5 words?
I think headstrong for me, I can get very determined and have where I get really hyper focused and I get passionate about something, and almost to a place where I think it might be a challenge to get me to back down or change perspectives. I can get fired up about things, and just headstrong in the sense that I, when I believe in something or I believe something, I'm just kind of all in. And it just, I think maybe other people may see that as something that is like, whoo, she can get a little feisty. She can stick her guns in a way.
Mm-hmm. Not in the sense of, oh, that person's a lot, right? We don't want to have a negative meaning. I want something positive.
No, no, I think I'm definitely passionate and um but headstrong in the sense that, I am independent, and when I believe in something, I'll give it my all. And, it just takes a lot for me to back down from a challenge, and just be somebody who is not afraid of difficult things.
Yeah, I respect that a lot. Bubbly and confident and resilient. They're very different from each other. Bubbly. Were you by chance a cheerleader? I kind of picture you as a cheerleader.
I was actually a dance team. I was on the dance team. So I danced growing up, and then I was, danced all through high school. I did a little bit of teaching dance. I would teach middle school and high school teams, and then for a very, very, very short stint. There's like maybe one picture out there. I did arena football cheerleading, and yeah, that was a lot for me. I think there was kind of a turning point in my life because that industry can be very tough on you physically, your physical appearance. And so it didn't take me very long to get in there and realize that that really wasn't what was important to me. and I didn't stay very long. But yep, so not a cheerleader, but definitely kind of that rah rah.
You know what? I think you're a cheerleader of others. It doesn't have to be related to a team because I think you're super supportive of a lot of initiatives and also whatever it is. My opinion of you has been so positive because I would agree with all of these words. You know, you're very, very passionate about economic development and seeing growth and how can we help grow the companies that we have here in obviously Orlando. But I've also seen that carry over into other things that are not related to that. And when we sat down and talked about mental health, that's when I could see, man, that one even went bigger than your love of economic development.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Resilient. What about that one?
I have been, people, they think they get a perception of who someone is by how they carry themselves, maybe their type of job, their educational level. But I came from a very dysfunctional, ever-changing, traumatic childhood. I didn't have a dad at all. My mom was a single mother and had a severe mental illness, and we moved a lot, and we didn't come from, we didn't have a lot of things. We had to kind of be creative and resourceful, and that for me is what lit a fire in me to overcome and not stay in and use that as something that would hold me back, or could have totally changed the trajectory of who I am as a person. And so I have been very resilient, not only as a little girl, as a teen, but even now in my professional life. Lots of changes, and I'm having to be nimble and flexible, and it just has kind of stuck with me.
I find that to be really true, especially with how fast technology goes through our lives. We truly have to be going, oh, well, looks like there's another update today on pick a channel, right? Or
Hmm.
whatever platform you're using.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what has your career path been like? Where were you if you went to college or high school, and how'd you get to where you are now? You can tell that journey however you wish, but it's always interesting. And now you're over here at Orlando Economic Partnership and you're overseeing innovation and technology. And I think that's amazing, especially for women. I love seeing women in these roles.
Yeah, if you would have told me this 6 months ago, I would have never in a million years thought I would be here, literally. But no, when I was growing up, I thought I wanted to be a nurse. And so I basically spent the first 3.5 years of my undergrad in college going to nursing school. And at the same time, I was working in hospital settings as a nursing assistant in all the different areas from ER and ICU, you name it. And I struggled with the coursework and just found myself not happy while I was working in a hospital. I thought, gosh, I'm really glad I'm getting this exposure now because I love the people side of it. I don't know that I love so much the bedside direct care as a nurse. And so I abruptly, my senior year, changed my degree to psychology and went from working on the medical side of a hospital to working on the inpatient child and teen and adult psychiatric units. And so it kind of, I always did that. I always worked and was in school for the same type of thing, and just basically found myself connecting with people on a level because of my own personal lived experiences. I found that I was a natural advocate. I was very non judgmental to that population. And it immediately ignited this spark in me that if I wasn't going to be able to maybe change my mom, like my mom could never be a patient of mine, but maybe there was something into going into a field where I could learn about mental health, mental wellness, um, developmental disability, you name it. And so I graduated undergrad with a psychology degree and went right into a master's program in applied behavior analysis and immediately knew that I wanted to use that to work in behavioral health, not just with autistic individuals, which is really what that degree is, mostly what people go into that field for. And so I worked in every possible setting that I could, from children to adult geriatrics who had brain injury, severe mental illness, addiction disorders, you name it. And
So you were talking about how you got from being a nurse into this whole field about working with individuals that are autistic, but there's got to be a reason why that was so important to you, other than, do you have family members or anybody that is?
yeah, so no, I chose to go into applied behavior analysis to learn about human behavior
Mm,
and to be able to use that degree to become a clinician who would work with individuals with mental illness.
mm.
And although I did get training in autism spectrum disorders, and I have worked within that throughout my career, I really started to just work in, hospitals for mental illness, psychiatric units, state psychiatric hospitals, brain injury units, and inpatient and outpatient behavioral health settings. I then realized that I loved being a clinician, but I really wanted to take that to the next level and become a leader and somebody who could grow, get promotions. And so I decided to go back and get my MBA. And I did that and went on and got some additional. So I got my master's of business administration and then healthcare admin. And at that point in my career, I was working in long term care with adults who had neurocognitive disorders like dementia, and really started to go down this path of becoming an actual healthcare executive. I became a licensed nursing home administrator to learn the ins and outs of how to operate long-term care facilities. And from there, I was basically headhunted by the largest behavioral health training organization out there called Universal Health Services. And they scooped me up and said, your journey, we think you'd be perfect to come on board and we will train you to be a hospital CEO for behavioral health.
Okay.
And so I took that leap of faith and got training to run psychiatric hospitals. And from there, really just realized that, I thought my path was leading me to be kind of a C-suite person within behavioral health or healthcare. And their competitor, HCA, called me and said, hey, we'd love to have you come work with us. We've got a beautiful hospital on the beach. And, I lived in Kentucky all my life, and I thought this is a dream. So my husband and I, we took that leap of faith in 2018 and sold our house, left everything we knew, and moved to Pensacola, Florida. And while I was there, I was in charge of 3 psychiatric inpatient units and outpatient programs, and had the opportunity to stay with that company, but transfer to a larger hospital that was a level 1 trauma hospital in Savannah, Georgia. And so there comes move number 3. So my husband and I picked up in January of 2020, right before COVID hit. And I came in full steam ahead, ready to change the culture and really grow that behavioral health program at that hospital. And COVID hit 3 months later, and it was a really stressful time of uncertainty with a lot of high expectations. And I started to just think about, what I wanted long term, being in my 30s. And I felt like I had kind of accomplished a lot in a really short period of time, but I no longer knew that I really wanted to just be somebody who ran a psych hospital. And so I kind of soul searched and prayed and put in my 30-day notice without having another job at the time. And I just told my husband, something just in my gut tells me that this may not be the place long term. And so I did that. And I ended up meeting a woman who ran a company here in Orlando that was for individuals with autism. And it was in multiple states. And she asked me to move for the fourth time and come work with her in Orlando. And so I did that in January of 21. I'm sorry, not January, it was the summer, June. And, that position, there was a lot of responsibility. Things were moving really quickly. It was my first work from home ever job. And so I felt really out of sorts, working from behind a computer screen, but I felt like, still had a lot of responsibility, and that company started to go in a different direction. And so I had the opportunity. I was in Leadership Orlando, the program that is through the Orlando Economic Partnership. And that was a gift to me from that CEO of the job that I moved here for. And she had put me in that class. And as things started to shift at her company, I immediately knew that I needed to reach out to who I, had met locally to find a job. And the OEP was it. And so fast forward to June of this year, I came on board with Tech and Innovation. I major change, but really, it's all transferable, right? Because it's about the relationships. It's about helping people, social impact, the greater good. And so it was a really easy transition for me. And I'm just mind blown every day about like what's happening in the world in innovation, and just really, really grateful for where I'm at in this moment in my life right now.
So where did you say you went to school?
Which time?
Well, let's go with the MBA.
So I got my MBA it was called Indiana Wesleyan University.
Okay.
Because I lived in Kentucky, and they had a remote campus. My first master's was from a private college, kind of like Rollins is here, called Spalding University.
Oh, I've heard of it.
And then my undergraduate degree was at the University of Louisville.
Okay. All
Yeah.
good schools, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Really good. Yeah, you hadn't mentioned them, and I always like to just ask, where did people go to school? It's nice to give those schools some recognition, right, for creating awesome people.
Oh, yeah.
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 So the job that you have, what does that entail that you get to do? Because it sounds, I know that you're, working closely with Synapse, and we did have Brian as a guest on the show a
I
couple
love
weeks
Brian.
ago, and his
Yeah.
show's already out. Yeah, he's
He's
great.
phenomenal. He is. He's quirky, and he's so kind. And he's been somebody that, just welcomed me with open arms. But I am one of two senior directors on for Tech and Innovation. I cover West Coast. So my job really is, just think of me, I'm an ambassador for Orlando, for our region, and all of the exciting things that we're doing in tech and innovation here. And I travel to the West Coast and look to educate companies about what we're doing here, to see if they may be a good fit for our ecosystem, and excited about what we're doing here in the metaverse, and ultimately to try to add jobs to our city here, and just help grow the economy from tech and innovation side of things.
That's got to be a lot of fun, because first off, you get to travel and you're going over to the West Coast. Do you guys divide this United States down in half? So
Yeah.
like you get to have all of Texas, or do you divide
Yep.
Texas?
Yeah. So Kristen is my partner, and she's amazing. She covers everything east of the Mississippi, and I cover everything west. And how that came about was I started at the OEP 3 months sooner. And so David, my boss, was nice enough and said, "Hey, you get to choose, what market do you want?" And I love the West Coast, and so I grabbed it up, and worked out perfect because she loves the East Coast, and she's from DC, and so it's a great split for us.
Nice. Very, very nice. Yeah. And so that's how I guess some of your predecessors, I don't think I knew this information. Their job was to go and recruit companies and bring them to Orlando. And we would end up finding, oh, Red Six just moved to Florida,
Yeah,
right? From
yeah,
California.
yes,
And the other companies that have chosen to make Florida, Orlando, their home base.
yes. You're exactly right. And what's really neat about the team, the tech team in general at the OEP is they have it's evolving. And so the way it was a year ago is not how it is today, and it won't be this way next year. But they're very supportive of, you know, um, trying things, thinking outside the box and looking at how to market our region and how to brand ourselves and recruit the right companies that really fit in here, that we can help, grow, that also can bring value to, what we're doing here. So it's a very unique opportunity, and it's one that, every day I get the opportunity to hear from these companies who are just doing amazing things that, we don't even can't even fathom, in certain technologies that haven't come out yet, or things that are going to be an additive to our life one day. And I just get off these calls and I'm like, people are so creative and so, smart, and this is my job. I get to hear about these awesome new up and coming things, or these company success stories where they started at, starter studio here locally or somewhere like that in another state, and are now, have scaled, or or a unicorn, or it's just a really, really, it's something I've never experienced before, and honestly never knew a job like this existed, or it would have been a dream job.
Well, I'm really glad that you ended up here. It's been just so nice having you engaged in our community, and you've embraced it wholeheartedly. Yeah, definitely. So you've learned a lot about economic development, and I'm sure that you've seen that there's even a place where your passion for mental health, I'm going to skip around a little bit, um, is also something that there's a lot of technology going in.
Yes. Yes. So this, it's no secret that mental health is on the rise,
Hmm.
that 1 in 5 Americans will experience a mental health condition at some point in their lifetime. And so that could be you or a loved one. And it takes on average 10 years for an individual to get an accurate diagnosis and treatment that is effective. And if you think about somebody who is having, symptoms, maybe it's major depression or anxiety, or, something worse where they're, psychotic or whatever, and they don't get the right treatment, and they're living with the symptom burden, why suicide rates are so high. Then you look at, cities, especially rural areas where the resources are scarce, where just people don't have access to care, and or the stigma around mental health is still very, very real. And so people put their guard up and they try to protect themselves, and they don't want to expose that they're experiencing things. And it can go from bad to worse very quickly, and it just impacts all of us so greatly. And the community, I think, especially post the pandemic, are starting to recognize how important mental health and mental wellness is for each one of us.
Because yesterday was World Mental Health Day.
Yes.
And I would say, yes, You are absolutely, I agree with you totally. The pandemic made a lot more aware. We take so much of our life for granted. For example, oh, we can jump in a car and go to the store and we can do things. But when everybody is saying, no, I'm sorry, you have to stay in your house and you have to quarantine, and all of those things that you used to do are not permitted now because we've got to figure this out. It was changing. For me, I get my energy from being around people and differentiating, separating a work environment from a home environment. So it was super depressing to me.
Yeah. And we saw a rise of depression and anxiety, upwards of about 40%, an increase of about 40% of individuals who may have not otherwise experienced things like depression and anxiety.
Mhm. And, statistically, I know that the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMIGO, and there is a chapter here in Orlando, Florida. I've worked with them before. They've been a client of mine. And one of the things that you had mentioned earlier was 1 in 5 will have some type of a disorder. I
Yes.
found that to be I sat there and I thought that can't possibly be true. It's got to be the opposite. 1 in 5 does not have it, whereas 4 out of 5 do. It's just that people are not disclosing because, just like you said, stigma. They don't
Yes.
want people to say, oh, well, what's wrong with you? When yet everybody, if they're honest, has experienced either anxiety or depression, or they've been entertained thoughts of suicide. I mean, there's all of those are the spectrum. It's not just Asperger's, it's
Yeah.
not just bipolar. It is, way bigger than that. And autism falls in that spectrum too. So does that. Some have said Down syndrome, it's kind of a mix, where people are on that. But the point of it all is that it really is more people than I think
Yes.
actually disclose. Do you think that's a fair assessment?
Yes, absolutely. It's really more about 1 in 4
Mm-hmm.
at this point. But yes, I think there's a ton of undiagnosed, undocumented, unreported individuals, and I think it's just it's something that touches every single one of us, and we're just it's it's just got to be something that everyone is thinking about on a regular basis to be proactive so that we can improve our system. I think that's the right way to say it. There's a lot of opportunity out there across, the nation, the world, on a macro and micro level to um, acknowledge the problem. And I think for me, where I kind of find myself getting frustrated is we're hearing a lot of the buzzwords now, right? That mental people are acknowledging that there is a problem, that there is um, an epidemic of people who have mental illness. But I don't hear anybody say, okay, now what? Now what are we doing about it? How are we going to solve this? Where do we start? And so it's time to now take action and do things as a community, to fix the problem. There are solutions out there. It's just it takes the right people and the right amount of uh, I think enough is enough kind of mindset. But I love that you mentioned NAMI. I actually am on the board of NAMI Greater Orlando here, and they're doing some amazing things. They have a new executive director. His name is Freddie. He started about about a month and a half ago, and he just hit the ground running and has had some amazing events over the last week for Mental Health Awareness Week, and then of course World Mental Health Day yesterday. So it's a great organization. A lot of people don't know what NAMI stands for. And so the more we can do to let people know that there is a local chapter, but it is the largest grassroots organization in mental health. And their services are free. So I
Mm-hmm.
think people, as long as they know that, that they have services for family and for the individual, I think a lot more people would feel safe to reach out to a place that, is confidential and doesn't have to go through their insurance, but they can, kind of look into if they need support or not.
There was a young man that I had heard about when I was there 5 years ago, is when I was working with them. And his name is Johnny Crowder.
Yeah.
Do you know him? Have you heard of him?
No, tell me
Okay.
the name definitely sounds familiar.
Yeah. So I met him when he was bipolar, and he was going through a lot of health issues. Definitely. He is the writer, the author of something called Cope Notes, and just dealing with, anything that's a depression or any of those
Yeah.
types of things. I say he's um, bipolar, and I need to correct myself. He may not be, because he's also done a TEDx talk, and it says he's a suicide and abuse survivor. So depression would definitely fall in there, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, he's going to be a guest on my show
I love
in a month. Yes. So we're going to be starting the new year off with him as a guest. And I've been asking him to be a guest on my show
Yeah.
for, I don't know, the past couple of years, and he finally told me yes. I
That's
could not
awesome.
be more excited because he's very dynamic. He was like in a heavy metal band. He's been one of those big advocates of NAMI, and I am just really excited to have him coming in here and opening up January of 2023 as one of those really key speakers that's going to
Yeah.
be in this
That
mental health area.
Yeah, and I'm excited. I'll definitely check out that episode, and it's just great that you can continue to use your platform to bring awareness to something that's so important. And I think a lot of people, it's kind of medicine for the soul, to be able to hear other people's stories, and really the more you share your own story, the more you heal.
Mhm.
And so I think that's great. I'm so glad you're doing that.
Yep, I am also. Thank you for those kind words too. So, jumping over here, going back to like what your role is at Orlando Economic Partnership, let's talk about what the metaverse is. There's always
Yeah.
all of this speculation, and Orlando has claimed itself as the meta center. And we have Kathy Hackle, the third highest in the world of metaverse, as a spokesperson for us. Um, just bounce off of any of those things,
Yeah.
that you would like.
Yeah. Yeah. So the metaverse is, it is the future of really kind of how the internet will eventually evolve to. People will use, they'll talk about Web 3.0. And so the metaverse, if you think about the metaverse in a way that makes it functional, we can talk specifically about 5 vertical sectors of types of work that is being done, and types of companies and services that make up what the metaverse is. So it's augmented reality and virtual reality, AR, VR.
Mhm,
It's artificial intelligence.
mhm,
It's gaming.
mhm.
It's I
NFTs.
Yep. So it's crypto and blockchain, or NFTs. It's called Internet of Things, or IoT. So you start talking about things like semiconductors, and then it's 3D simulation, or modeling, simulation, and training. And Orlando has companies that are really, really innovative, and are excelling at creating the building blocks for the metaverse in those key sectors, specifically AR, VR. We, have a huge, the pedigree of the professors that teach at UCF and some of our other colleges, Full Sail, you name it. So some of the top professors in the country are at UCF teaching AR, VR. So that means that the talent that's coming out of that college, perfect talent pipeline for your workforce right here. The 3D simulation industry is a $6 billion market here annually.
Mhm,
And so that's things like looking specifically at, Department of Defense contracts and um, companies who create simulation and training for, our military and even, commercial as well. We've got gaming, which is huge here. You've got your, Electronic Arts, EA Sports, who has their second headquarters in our downtown, the Creative Village. Um, it's just, we are a really, on kind of the cusp of becoming the epicenter for companies within the metaverse. And that's our goal. So we have trademarked Central Florida to be known as the Meta Center, like people know Silicon Valley and the West Coast. And we, are creating the narrative to be known as, the epicenter for the metaverse right here.
I love that. One of the things that most people don't know about Orlando, and I've been going to this event for about 6 years now, is the ITSEC conference, the
Yeah.
Interservice International Training and Simulation Industry, conference. It's like really long name. Well, I just did a real quick search. So by 2030, the estimated 2026 to 2030, the estimated U.S. industry is going to be $13.25 billion. And, that's like what it was supposed to be valued at. And then they're estimating by 2026, it's going to be 26.9 billion. By 2030, 13.25 billion. I mean, that's a lot of money.
Yes.
Those are the
Yes.
companies that Florida has so well. We have NASA, we have the training and simulation, so many companies here in that industry. And then we also have the ITSEC conference that has been here for like 6 years,
Yeah.
which is a showcase of everything in that training and learning
Yes.
and simulation.
And you brought up a great point. A lot of people, they really do see us as the hospitality industry, where Disney, and all the magic is, which is very true. But hospitality makes up about 12% of
Yeah,
the jobs here.
it's hardly
And
anything.
what's been really neat to see over the last 12 months or so is we're getting on the map to becoming a tech hub.
Mhm.
And we have the stats to back it up. We have 4 times more investments are happening in Orlando companies. It's the number one fastest growing city for entrepreneurs as of 2021. The best place to work in tech as of 2021. The number 2 fastest growing salaries for tech workers. I think it was 111% year over year growth in tech. Just last month, it came out, and we were the number 1 city for tech growth. So it's a really exciting time because things are starting to align. We have the talent, we have the companies, we have the collaborative organizations, we have the institutions who support, companies. We have, it's a community of collaboration. And, I think it's a community where everyone believes that, we really truly can make this happen. And, we will be successful in it. And it's just really exciting to see that we're going to, eventually get the credit for all of the really hard work that people have been putting in here for years. And no one outside of this area knew about it.
Yeah. And a real quick little search also, because you mentioned video games and
Mhm.
just the game market industry, it's anywhere from 504.29 billion to 583.69 billion. That's a lot of
Yeah.
money.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
It's
means people are spending that money on games, obviously, but that's opening up different career paths. And it's not
yeah.
just, being a game artist. It's really, there's so many ways that you can go into a career in that every industry, whether it's marketing, whether it's analytics, whether it's going to be in that serious games space. Also, all of these things are relevant. HR will be there. I mean, we'll see
Yeah.
so many different jobs.
Yeah. You'll see the companies that are kind of creative and entertainment based, who do really, unique things and pull, you're already seeing it, the concerts in the metaverse and, different things where you never have to leave your house to travel the world, right? But it'll also be used by every other company will start to adopt processes and will want to go in a direction where they're going to be innovative in their own right, to stay relevant, to stay efficient. It's just like you said. I mean, there's going to be positions in sales. There'll be developer positions, and what I have noticed is happening is you're starting to see even the nonprofit sectors who are developing programs for kids who are in elementary school, or women specific or at risk, community specific or underserved populations, so that they can get the resources to get the training and the skill sets to be able to get the jobs in the tech space. So I think everybody's invested in.
Mhm.
We're a few years out from what the metaverse will actually look like on a day to day, but it's being built right here, and we're doing a really, really great job. So I think
I agree. I
pat on the
agree.
back to everybody who has been kind of the trailblazers.
I took a tour of a semiconductor because you mentioned that also,
Mhm.
a tour of a company that's in Melbourne, Florida. And it was a small company, and the gentleman's considering selling it. And so I was just talking to him about preparing a business plan to put his company on the
Yeah.
market. Anyway, and so again, I get this luxury of being able to look some of this stuff up. The global semiconductor industry is poised for a decade of growth and projected to become by 2030 a $1 trillion industry. And I don't think people realize all of the things that semiconductors can do, but we'll save that for another time unless
Have
you.
you been out to Neo City yet?
I have not,
Here.
and I've wanted to. Are you going out there?
So we did so the OEP had an investor update where it was held out in Neo City, and Neo City just received a $52 million grant from the Biden administration, specifically to help with Osceola County and that whole area, to help with semiconductor
Manufacturing.
manufacturing. And so again, just another
Example.
testament to what's growing here, and just the possibility of there's so much room for new people to come to our community and into our market and take advantage of these resources. And we need people who are subject matter experts and top researchers and top developers, and people who are really passionate about this.
I could not agree even more. So, but this has been delightful. So, we're going to take a little bit of a step back and get some more little personal questions about you. What is the hardest lesson that you ever had to learn that changed your life?
Mm. That it's okay to fail.
So true.
That for me, I have always been very focused on professional achievements, and trying to always reach the next level, the next title, the next something, and was really hyper focused on just trying to be kind of an overachiever, I guess, or be successful in my own right. And I'm sure a lot of that goes back to, who I was growing up and how I was raised. But when I had that moment where I decided to kind of walk away from running that hospital, and then to walk away from healthcare altogether, it was like I initially, looked at it as, oh my God, you dedicated all this, education and money and time to go into this field, and you've obviously failed if you're leaving it, or if you've changed jobs multiple times, or but that's not it at all. And it's okay. And failure is just a perception. And all it is it's setting you up for
It's a
you know,
great teacher.
yeah, it's just it teaches you each time. I have gotten stronger, more self-assured in who I am and what I value. And, I just have learned not to be so hard on myself.
Hmm. Truly good and wise counsel. So what are you most grateful for?
I am most grateful for my husband.
And why so? Let's give him some serious props here.
Yes, because we've been together since we were in our early 20s. And I think because he came into my life, he is really, he has stood by me almost like the, Stedman with Oprah. You don't see him, but he's a good man and he's always there. And, I have just been able to accomplish more in my life with him as my partner. And I think because he's allowed me to kind of be indecisive over the last several years and make changes, big changes, where we moved multiple times. And I'm just so grateful that he is so supportive, so understanding, and really is the simple guy who is just content and doesn't need the limelight, doesn't, care about accolades, and um is just that perfect balance for me. And I just feel like I am able to, soar because I have him holding it down and always being my cheerleader.
So what's his name?
Nick.
Okay, a little shout out for Nick.
Yes.
Yeah, that's super sweet. And who in your life has had the biggest impact?
Yeah. You know, there's lots of people. I'm so grateful. I've had so many people who have, been influencers for me. I think definitely the first person is my mom, because it gave me the motivation to learn about, what was going on in my life and to choose the path that I did for my career, to become such a strong advocate, and to just see that, for me, she has just taught me that I just, I deserve a lot, but that I have to work really hard. And, to just be someone who, just keeps fighting, even when it gets tough. And, we haven't always seen eye to eye, but she's an inspiration to me because, I think I have more empathy. I have more, I'm just a better person because of what I had to go through. Um, and so she's definitely um, been the main person. And then, I had a really great mentor, a professional mentor, when I first started out to become a hospital CEO, and his name is Greg Stewart. And he is a CEO of a hospital back in Indiana. And he just taught me what it was like to not only be a good person, but you could be a really good person and still be a strong, successful leader. And he mirrored that and demonstrated what that looked like. And, when I think about what a leader looks like, it's someone who embodies both a warmness and an approachableness, but also somebody who is, an executor and gets things done. And I think he embodies both of those things. And it really, made a very positive impact on who I want to become, in my journey.
This is really good. It's so hard to believe we're coming up on the end of the show.
I
So even though
know.
I'm going to take a very quick break, we're only going to have time for 2 questions in it. So we're going to take a moment to acknowledge our sponsor, Cat 5 Studios.
The Intern Whisperer is brought to you by Cat 5 Studios, who help you create games and videos for your training and marketing needs that are out of this world. Visit Cat 5 Studios for more information to learn how Cat 5 Studios can help your business. Thank you, Cat 5 Studios.
And we're back to the second half of our show where we focus on what does the future look like in 2030. Well, what's really great is we've been covering a lot of that in the previous, right before the break. And so here we are now. I'm going to give you a choice. Do you want to talk about digital twins? Do you want to talk about what you think economic development will look like in 2030? Do you want to talk about robots, AR, VR, any of those things? What would you like to talk about?
Oh gosh. I think we could talk a little bit about the digital twin, but really maybe the world's going to look like.
Okay.
And
And I still want to come and get a tour. So I'm going to ask you if I can come in sometime next week or the following week, whenever it is that you're not busy. And I want to see the digital twin.
yes, of course you can. You can come. You're always welcome. But I would love to set up a special tour for you. And
Yeah.
whether that's me or, Trent, who's the creative director at the OEP, has really kind of been that champion
Mm.
from beginning and really taking the reins right now. But we've got some upcoming demo days as well on October 17th. So I'll give you some more information and you can pick when you want to come out.
Ooh, I'm taking you up on that one for sure. Can I bring some of my interns with me too? If they
Yes,
want to?
of course.
Excellent. They will love that very
Please.
much. Okay. So digital twin, real quick, what is it?
So a digital twin, is really just it is a virtual replication of something physical. So it's a digital replication of something in the physical world. And there's a specific technology, and it's the digital twin for us at the OEP office is the first of its kind in the world like it, because it's of our entire region. So it covers 800 square miles from coast to coast. And it has been developed by Unity. So they've actually developed the software, and it's unbelievable. It's when you walk into the room, you don't have to wear eyewear to actually see the 3D high fidelity area. It shows past, present, and future information. It's going to be a great economic development tool for us to showcase things within our city and our region. And it's a game changer. It's a game changer for people so that they are not having to put their clients in a van and drive them around the city. But you can be very efficient. You can, again, get very accurate data and use the tool in a way where it's constantly going to evolve. And so over time, not only will that be used in the office, but eventually we will have it to where you can pull it up on the internet. So our phase 3 of that project in the next year or so will be, maybe you're in another country, or there's somebody who flies in and they can't bring their whole team. They'll be able to send a link to that team member and they can log in live and be a part of the demonstration.
Wow, that's amazing. That's going to be really, so it's not a Zoom call. Just so our listeners know, we're talking about actually something that is an augmented virtual reality experience. Is that what they could expect?
Yeah, so you can actually, so if you're doing it remote, you're not physically there standing in the room, then you could either log in on your cell phone or your smartphone, log in on your desktop and just look at it like we are right now. You're not going to get obviously the 3D side of it, but you also could put an Oculus headset on, and then you're going to be immersed into that 3D experience.
Yep. I remember when you guys did something, I think it was last month, it might have been August, where you had an experience where we could go and try it out. I did not have Oculus headgear on, but I got the idea. So, it was cool to see. All right. Well, your predictions, what is 2030 going to look like?
It is going to look like a lot of, unfortunately, I think one side of it is going to look like a lot of positions who are currently manned by people, right? So your drive-through workers, your cashiers, your bankers, things that can become can be done by bots or can be done through equipment will. And so, you can imagine pulling up to a fast food restaurant and they're not being a person there, but instead it's a virtual avatar that greets you, takes your order, and the food comes out, and maybe there's one employee, one physical human in the whole building.
There's a restaurant in Kissimmee, I think it's Kissimmee, that does that, and it delivers its food to you. It's a robot.
Yeah. I think it's just going to be, hopefully by then we'll be on the other side of this. Like when the internet was coming out 20 years ago, we will starting to become comfortable with the new internet, the web 3.0 concepts. And I think, I think it'll be embedded in work, life, and play. And it'll just, everything that can be automated, everything that can be, animated, automated, and shiny and light up, and it's going to be there. It's going to be kind of just a new way of life, and but also we'll have a lot of great functionality, and we'll create a lot of new unique jobs, and we'll create a lot of efficiency, and a lot more collaboration across the world. The more the technology enhances and gets better, the more we will have opportunities, at our fingertips that we've never had before.
I totally agree with you. And I did another little quick search on robot delivers food in Kissimmee, and they're in Orlando too. So people, they're here. We just don't even know about them. All right. So what is the best mentoring advice that you want to share with our listeners?
Don't be afraid to take chances.
It's kind of going back to what you said earlier. Don't be afraid to fail.
Yeah, don't be afraid to fail. But in this, I mean, don't be afraid to take chances in the sense that we only have one life. And there's, doesn't have to be this concept that, you study one thing because you're meant to do one thing for the rest of your life. But, dream as big as you can. Don't take no for an answer. Just, put yourself out there. Don't be afraid to ask, questions. Don't be afraid to, change position, change jobs, or stand up and say, this doesn't make me happy. This isn't what I want to do anymore. Just take risks and advocate for yourself. And, the sky's the limit. It really is. It's all about what we put into the universe and what we get back. And I think at the end of the day, my goal for myself is to be able to be in a position where I can have the greatest positive influence, and do things that at the end of that I feel good about, that I feel like make a difference and don't go against, my values, and allow me to be the best version of myself. And, where you're in a position where you feel happy, and you just are at a place where things make sense in your life. And until you get there, don't stop taking chances until you get to a place where you feel, you're starting to be at peace with where you're at.
That's good stuff right there. So how can people get in touch with you? We were going to give your LinkedIn profile, but is there anything else? I mean, can they reach out to you at Orlando Economic Partnership? And
sure. Yep. They can reach out at Lindse.Murphy. And it's LINDSE .Murphy, MURPHY at orlando.org. And, I love to connect with everyone, whether it be, tech related, whether it be, community related, or, something in mental health, or, just to connect. I love connecting with people, and I'm still really new here. So I just look forward to seeing what the
possibilities.
next part of this chapter looks like.
Yep. I get you. Well, I want to thank you so much for being a guest on the show. This has been delightful. I am very appreciative because I know that you have had a super busy day and you made this, adding on to the rest of your day. So thank you so much. And also for all of the great work that you do.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it. I'm honored to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, my pleasure. Well, I will see you soon next week
Yes,
or the
digital
following.
twin. You're going to be
Digital
there.
twin.
We're going to make it happen. You're important. We got to get you over there.
Thank you. We want to thank our sponsor, Cat5 Studios, and thank our production team, Josue Gonzalez, Dina Burks, Gio Vargas, and Lester Eccles. Our music is by Sophie Lloyd, and if you would like to have your inclusion tip of the week shared on our show, record your inclusion tip, send it as an audio file to us at info@e4c.tech, and include your name, job role, and where you work. We will send you some Intern Pursuit Game green screens for your next video conference call. And be sure to visit Employers for Change, who brought you this podcast, at www.e4c.tech to learn how you can create real diversity and inclusion inclusion culture while skilling your people for the future of work. Thank you for supporting the Intern Whisperer podcast by subscribing to our show on Podbean or your favorite podcast channel.